Well, it is finally time to start the season in reviews for the Toronto Blue Jays 2024-2025 active rosters.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. We have Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. As always, I'm Braden Iwasko. He's Carter First. You can find us on X or Twitter. Braden 5 Iwasko, Carter First 2 as well on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. And if you haven't subscribed already here on YouTube or you're listening anywhere else, we'd appreciate it if you could head over to the YouTube page, subscribe there. It helps us, puts us at the top of your guys' page, and it lets you know if there's any live streams, any shorts, any videos, whatever the case may be. It just works. Other than that, we got the Discord link down in the description. So if you guys want to join that, you can talk Blue Jays with us wherever, whenever you want. It sort of works amazingly. So thanks for the tip, by the way, to the person that told us to start a Discord. There you go. Lots to get into today. We're starting the season in reviews. So we've ranked, I think it's 31 players that we're going to go over. We'll do sort of like a prospects thing another day, sort of later on in the offseason. But these are just active players that have played games or guys that, are right there who could possibly play in 2025. So we're starting at the bottom of the list. We have number 31, 30, 29, and 28 for you today. And to say the least, I don't know. Like some of these guys, it's we don't know what to say because some of them are younger guys we haven't seen a lot. Some of the guys just haven't played with the Blue Jays a ton. And some of the guys just aren't that important. But they're important pieces going into next year because where will they fit in? Because you need guys like some of the guys we're going to talk about today just to fill out the roster and to play if a guy gets hurt or we'll talk about Tyler Heineman in the sense of, how many games will he play? We'll get into all of that today. But Carter, starting it off, how do you feel about the season in reviews? Like, are you ready to sort of leave 2024 in the past? This is sort of our big goodbye to 2024.
Yeah, after we get done with, honestly, the offseason, we start getting the free agency signings. I think there's going to be a very minimal talk about 2024. We're hopefully thinking that's going to be the forgotten season because literally nothing went right in the year of 2024 for the Toronto Blue Jays. When you talk about this list, we have 31 players. When you go from, honestly, 19 to 31, a lot of these guys are the unproven guys like Will Wagner's, the Joey Loperfidos, the Leo Jimenez. These guys have played under 100 MLB games in their careers. So it's very hard to make projections and picks based off just this tiny sample size that you do have. You can't really take a lot away from these guys. These guys are very young as well, 22, 23, 24 years old, very young people that can still grow into their own bodies, grow into their own game, and make a bunch of decisions over the next couple seasons to really make or break their careers. But yeah, we do have 4 players for you guys today. And before we do get into it, I just kind of want to go over the process a little bit. So the way we did it was me and Braden made our lists. The first, again, from 31 to 19, there wasn't too much arguing because, again, there's a reason you can make an argument for a lot of these guys to be projected higher or lower than some of the other ones. But then we got into, obviously, we have some of our own fan favorites. You get into some of the top guys. Then, we start getting it a little bit more of the debates, things like that. And as we go through it, we'll kind of talk to you guys about which ones were a little bit harder to choose from compared to others. And also, this is 31 players. This is not accounting for any free agents the Toronto Blue Jays should sign. God forbid they don't sign anyone. This will be another great season ahead of the Toronto Blue Jays. They're obviously going to make some signings, so we'll cover those as they come in as well. But I guess, Braden, let's just jump right into it with our number 31 guy for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, Carter, let's get right into it. I mean, number 31 is Ryan Burr. And there was a couple guys, I think in these last couple spots, it wasn't so much that we didn't know where to place them. It was just what order we wanted these last 4 guys in. And so we ended up coming to the conclusion that Ryan Burr was going to be number 31. He was purchased by the Toronto Blue Jays from the Philadelphia Phillies. And I mean, Carter, I don't know, man. I'm going to go over his stats here, sort of give you a look at what he's done this season. In 2024, Ryan Burr had a 4.13 ERA. He played 34 games and had 32 and 2/3 innings pitched. His whip was a 1.255. He gave up hits per 9 were 8, home runs per 9 were 1.1, walks per 9 3.3, strikeouts per 9 12.9. So honestly, Carter, when we look at the stats, it's not the worst thing we've seen. But when it comes, out at the end, I mean, a 4.13 ERA out of the bullpen is not what you really want, and you sort of want him in a few more innings than 32 and 2/3. At the end of the day, Ryan Burr just doesn't do anything for me. I don't see the upside in him. I don't know, man. He's 30 years old. This is a guy that just doesn't move the needle for me. And I know that me and you've had conversations about Ryan Burr and sort of what he can do and what we think his role is going to be. But for me, at the end of the day, it's just really not moving the needle.
Yeah, he's had minimal innings. Again, a guy that he's a reliever. He's one of those guys that you're kind of taking a shot on. That's kind of what the Toronto Blue Jays did. You sent cash to the Philadelphia Phillies. Not really too much risk there. You need to reinforce your bullpen. And with Ryan Burr, what he did with the Toronto Blue Jays, the thing that stands out to me is you talk about the K rate when you look at Ryan Burr, second on the team and would have been first down the stretch because the number one guy in K rate was Yimi Garcia, who obviously did get moved at the trade deadline. And he showed a little bit of versatility as well this season. Obviously, as we got through the stretch, we had the Bowden Francis starts, we had Yariel Rodriguez, but we also had the 6-man rotation at the end of the year. So the way it was working out is Ryan Burr was spot starting in that first inning, and then Ryan Yarbrough would go out and throw 3, 4, 5 innings, you name it. But Ryan Burr was another one of those guys that he had a little bit of the Trevor Richards experience where you threw him in a bunch of different situations. You pitched him in sometimes in the 7th inning. I think the odd time in the 8th, didn't really have to rely on him in the 9th. Thank God. Honestly, you don't necessarily want to rely on a guy like Ryan Burr in the 9th inning. But yeah, he's opened. He's come out in the 5th, 6th, 7th, you name it. Higher leverage, medium leverage, opening for the games. And yeah, when you look at Ryan Burr, the stuff doesn't really jump off the page for me. And I think that's where it is for you. The strikeout rate is intriguing. And it's nice that he has done that. He's 107 innings pitched over his career, has 113 strikeouts. So it's just over that 1 strikeout per inning. That's pretty good for a reliever. It's the thing that for me with Ryan Burr is that he hasn't done it consistently and he hasn't done it over a long period of time. When you look at the pitch mix, there's nothing here that really excites me. He's got a decent fastball. It sits at 94. Again, when you look at Ryan Burr for what he did with the Toronto Blue Jays, it was nice that you had Ryan Burr in these situations, a guy that you could rely on in, again, the lower leverage situations. But is this a guy I want to pitch in the 7th, 8th, or 9th inning? Definitely not. But if he has a role in the team and he can do, honestly, exactly what he did last season, he's a guy that is 7th or 8th coming out of this bullpen. I think for me, it's not the worst thing for your Toronto Blue Jays lineup.
No, and you need guys like that, right? Your bullpen isn't going to be stacked with the best players of all time. It's a little bit of like, okay, who's having a good season and who can carry that over? And we'll see if Ryan Burr can do that. I don't know. I'm not sold yet. I do like the strikeouts as well, Carter. I think that's a great stat to have. But at the end of the day, he's not going to be one of those guys. And that's why we have him placed at 31. I mean, it's fine. He did fine. But when we go up this list, you start to see the bigger upside in a lot of these guys. And when we talk bullpen arms, there is a lot more guys that do have higher upsides. We'll get into even one today that we can talk about with that high upside sort of moving forward. I guess, Carter, you sort of talked about what you think his role will be next season. I guess that's if he's a Toronto Blue Jay, right? Like, we don't know what is going to happen with all these bullpen arms, some of these lower guys in this ranking of where they're going to end up. To me, yeah, I think Ryan Burr is going to be a player for this bullpen to start the season. Will he end there? I don't know, but that's sort of where I'm standing.
You can never have too many bullpen pieces. You can never have too many pitching arms. If Ryan Burr, again, if you guys, like I said, if he comes out as the 7th or 8th reliever on your team, that's not the worst thing. But again, you got to assume that the Toronto Blue Jays are going to make some moves for the bullpen in the offseason because this bullpen, as everyone knows, if you watch any sort of baseball for the Toronto Blue Jays in 2024, was horrendous to watch. Again, if you have Ryan Burr coming off of AAA, if you get him from Buffalo, you have some injuries. Injuries happen in baseball. So I want Ryan Burr to stay on this baseball team for sure. I want him to be in the system. I don't want him necessarily going anywhere. But again, it's bullpen arms, and he hasn't shown it consistently. So you're going to have to see what he does in spring training. That's really what it's going to come down to for a guy like Ryan Burr. If you can continue on what he did for the 2024 season in the backstretch of that Toronto Blue Jays season and be productive, put out the similar numbers that he did, I think he has a very good chance at least being, again, the lower leverage situations for the Toronto Blue Jays lineup, but it's tough to speculate for a guy like this because, again, we haven't even gotten into free agency. Ross Atkins says he wants to bolster the bullpen, he wants to do some other moves as well. So it really comes down to how much you do in free agency and then how these lower leverage guys can compete in spring training and try to win themselves a spot on the Toronto Blue Jays roster for 2025.
Yeah, and that's what will be interesting. Is going to be the preseason, is going to be the spring training to see really what happens. And I think he's a guy that Blue Jays fans can sort of keep an eye on just to see where he's going to end up. Yeah, he's not going to be my main focus of any game, I don't think. But if he does get to play in some of them, then I will, it'll be sort of one of those things in the back of my mind that I'm like, okay, what's going to happen with Ryan Burr this year? So we'll have to wait and see. But in saying that, we have still 3 more guys to get into here. We're going to go into Jonatan Clase and Tyler Heineman in the next segment, and then we'll sort of round this all out with Dillon Tate, sort of an interesting one, I know, for me and you. We had some debates over that one as well. So we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with those 2 guys as well. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I'm telling you, this is a huge component for me, is being able to bet while the game is going on, because I like to see the trends. I like to see guys' stats and sort of how they're doing middle of the game. And so this is a great deal with FanDuel here. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So, Carter, we talked about Ryan Burr. Now it's time to get into the other guys. And this is one of the people that I think is very interesting for the Toronto Blue Jays in this offseason. We'll get to Tyler Heineman. He is our number 29, but let's start with number 30. Jonatan Clase, Carter. Me and you, when he came to the Blue Jays, we've sort of not seen enough really to make a stout judgment right now. And that's in part to why we put him at 30. Because at the end of the day, we can't predict the future of some of these players. We don't know how they're going to be next season. If we really haven't seen anything. So where does he sort of stand? What was the thought process around putting him at 30?
Well, he played 7 games for the Toronto Blue Jays. That's kind of where it is with Jonatan Clase. The first thing you think of with Jonatan is his speed. This guy is blazing speed. You can't teach speed at all. This guy, if he can put the bat to ball together, if he can become a contact hitter or just be a serviceable hitter, again, not necessarily having to be an above league average hitter when you got that amount of speed. Again, he plays the outfield. That helps him a lot there. There's a role there for a guy like that, like the Daulton Pompeys, the Anthony Alfords of the Toronto Blue Jays, the guys that are a little bit quicker that you can put in big spots. Obviously, our king Bradley Zimmer was another one of those situations that just a little bit of a defensive substitution. But I think Jonatan Clase does have a little bit more upside than that. I mean, because if we're looking at the 7 games, if we're looking at the small sample size, if we didn't take in account for sample size, Jonatan Clase hit 350 with a 435 OBP, a 550 slugging, and a 985 OPS in those 7 games with the Toronto Blue Jays. Like, those are unbelievable stats, obviously, but it's 7 baseball games. So That's the thing. So when we go back to Clase, obviously coming back from the Yimi Garcia trade, a guy that, again, when you can't teach speed. So that's a very good characteristic to have. I just want to see him kind of put it together a little bit on the offensive side of the ball. Again, I'm not expecting this guy to go out and hit 30 home runs necessarily, but if he can kind of be even at 10 and hit 250, 260, be even slightly below league average hitter, I think that's something that the Toronto Blue Jays can work with.
Yeah, and he'll most likely be at the end of the day, I think if Jonatan Clase is on this roster in 2025 to start the season, I'm going to be shocked. I'm going to be shocked. I don't think that that's where Toronto Blue Jays fans want this team to end up. But if he does, I mean, he's going to be a option off the bench. He'll maybe be a guy that'll platoon a little bit, but I don't even think that that's what it's going to be. I really don't think he starts the season with the Toronto Blue Jays. But you're right. He's got the pieces of being a decent baseball player. It's just, you're right. We'll have to see how he puts it together. And I think some time in AAA going into this next season is probably going to be good for him. I think find little pieces to his game and sort of we'll see how he can build on from there.
Oh, and we had 23 plate appearances with the Toronto Blue Jays. When you look at his AAA stats, 244 batting average, a 288 OBP, a 363 slugging percentage, 651 OPS. That's sort of where you actually believe Jonatan Clase is. Again, if you can do it over a bigger sample size, there's hot and cold streaks, as we talk about all the time in the MLB. So it's one of those things that Clase, you can't take too much from what you got in that tiny sample size. But you like the upside there. Again, I've said it 3 times already. And speed is the only thing that this guy, for me, like right now, is popping off. And that would be the reason that he made the roster. But again, he's young. He's a guy that you traded for. You want to kind of reposition your prospects, repolster that prospect pool. So it's one of those things. You just got to wait for him in spring training, see if he can develop. And hopefully they can use him at some point to help this team out and win in 2025.
Yeah, man. I mean, he's only 22 years old. So there's lots of time for him to find that game and find a way to put those different aspects of his game together. In saying that, Carter, this is the one guy I really wanted to get into. We had him slotted in at 29 in our rankings for the Toronto Blue Jays, and that's Tyler Heineman. He is a guy that you need. You need a guy that can come in and catch some games for when Alejandro Kirk isn't playing. You can't have Kirk there for 162 games behind the dish. So you need a guy that is going to be somewhat defensively sound and honestly a warm body back there. Tyler Heineman is that. And I hate to say it. I don't want to completely say he's useless, nothing like that. But at the end of the day, that's all it really is. And so in totality, last season, he really only played in 7 games, Carter. He had 16 plate appearances and he batted a 083 with a 313 on base percentage, a slugging of 083, and an OPS of 396. Again, I don't really take a whole lot away from this. Just get a guy that can catch the ball, maybe, catch some runners possibly. That's about it. I don't take a lot away from this. You could go and you could pick up a catcher in free agency, but then that's more of your money. We just had this conversation on yesterday's episode about having about $50 million to spend if they don't want to break the, what's it called, Carter? The luxury tax. And so why would you go and spend on a position that a guy is going to play 45, 50 games at? That's not really the biggest component of what this team needs. You need to bolster other parts of this team. So I think that putting somebody in this position to start the season would be a waste of the Blue Jays funds that they have available. So I think Tyler Heineman just does the job. Honestly.
Yeah, it's no disrespect to Tyler Heineman, but you're bringing him in as a backup catcher just to be good defensively. And I think we kind of have to explain why Tyler Heineman's above a guy like Ryan Burr. Like I said, second strikeout rate on the Toronto Blue Jays. Tyler Heineman is right now, the way things are looking, he's kind of he's forced to play. Like you don't have anyone else. It's Tyler Heineman or you have Jacob Sharp, who you got in that Yimi Garcia trade maybe. Peyton Henry, again, had some injury troubles, things like that. I'm not even sure if they're going to bring him back as well. And it's not a guy you want to rely on even. That's one of those things. And then you look at free agency. I wanted to bring this up because the Toronto Blue Jays could do one of the funniest things that we've ever seen. And they could bring our boy back, Danny Jansen. Do we want that necessarily? I don't know. I mean, he would be better than Tyler Heineman, but you're probably going to have to pay a fair premium for Danny Jansen. But it would be kind of funny just to, get some free prospects from the Boston Red Sox and having a return of Danny Jansen. But other than that, you kind of talked about who else would it be besides Tyler Heineman? A James McCann, maybe you get an Austin Hedges, you can get a Yan Gomes, Kyle Higashioka, you're going to have to pay a premium for. And at that point, you still want Alejandro Kirk probably. Again, we're not in Ross Atkins' head. I would love to see what's going on in there a lot of the time. But it seems like he's going to run with Alejandro Kirk. And what Alejandro Kirk did in the back half of the stretch, I think you got to kind of let this guy at least have the full season to play to see if this guy is the real deal and can be a starting catcher for your operation. For Tyler Heineman, you're just relying on him as a second catcher to rotate in when Alejandro Kirk needs some rest. And
at the end of the day, if this team is in a playoff position by the trade deadline, there might be a move for that catcher, or if injury troubles happen to befall one of them, that is something they could look at. And maybe it's a trade, maybe it's a guy from that's whatever on the free agent market still, who knows? But that would be the only case that I would really be accepting to a deal with another catcher, is if Alejandro Kirk really has a disastrous season or an injury or something like that. So to start the season, you need Tyler Heineman. That's why he's here. You need a backup catcher. But at the end of the day, he's not bringing a ton offensively. I don't know, Carter. You got anything else on Tyler Heineman before we sort of kick off to the third here?
Just with the Ryan Burr, my prediction is Ryan Burr is going to start in AAA, and he might have some use, but I think Tyler Heineman is strictly just going to be used more. If you had the same sample size and they're playing the exact same amount of games, I think Ryan Burr is definitely just going to be better than Tyler Heineman. And then with Clase, it's just unproven. I don't think he's going to have much of a role on this team either in 2025. And that's, again, we're assuming that Ross Atkins is going to sign at least a couple of free agents. Again, I think that's a fair assumption based off previous years. Is it going to be the guys we want? That's a whole new question that we're going to have to break down eventually on this podcast. But with the Heineman experience, he's familiar. He's familiar with Toronto. It's his third year, fourth year. It would be back with the team. He was there in 2022, was there in 2023. Obviously played a little bit in 2024 as well. So some familiar face. I think a lot of Blue Jays fans kind of know what they're getting with Tyler Heineman, which is nice with a lot of unknowns on this team. Even though there's not a lot of upside there, it is nice to know what you got with your backup catcher.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. We got some Dillon Tate to talk about. Our 28th ranked prospect or 28th ranked player, I should say, not prospect. Well, and we'll talk about sort of how he became a Toronto Blue Jay and everything sort of in the middle. We'll break that all down coming up right after this break.
Today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They are the easiest and most exciting way to play fantasy sports because it's just you against the numbers. As you guys know, I'm a big fantasy guy, obviously NFL fantasy, NHL fantasy as well. But we talked about this previously on the podcast, obviously during these ad reads, that I won my NHL fantasy last year, but I sold all of my picks and now I'm struggling. I'm 0-3, one of the last place teams in the league. So I'm hoping that these picks for my fantasy team can kind of boost my fantasy team, hopefully get me to my first win. So I have Marchenko from the Columbus Blue Jackets. That line's been ridiculous. I have him more than 0.5 points. I think he already has an assist, so it looks like that one's hitting. And then I got to go with my Canucks. Obviously, they're playing the Carolina Hurricanes. So I got JT Miller more than 0.5 points, and I have Brock Besser more than 0.5 goals. If you know which players are going to perform on specific nights, this is a no-brainer. Download Prize Picks and start making your entries today. You can download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit matchup to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit matchup to $100. Prize Picks. Run your game.
So, Carter, let's get into our 28th ranked player on the Toronto Blue Jays. And I'm going to toss this one right to you because I know you had some stronger feelings than I did about Dillon Tate. So why don't you just throw it right to you and you can get into it.
Yeah, so I had Dillon Tate a little bit higher than you. The Ryan Burr Dillon Tate argument was they went a little strong, but again, it's some of these guys that is Dillon Tate going to be like a high leverage reliever on this team. I hope not, just based off what he's done in his career. But this guy was a first round pick and fourth overall pick. So obviously a guy that was a very highly touted prospect in 2015, got a $4.2 million signing bonus. He was drafted as a starting pitcher, being drafted fourth overall. Obviously, you want that upside there. You're not going to draft a reliever as your fourth overall pick, unless he is Emmanuel Clase ×3. That is just honestly a given to just get saves at the end of the day. So with Dillon Tate, the way that some bullpen arms work, I think a good majority of them I would say most people want to be starting pitchers in the MLB. That's where the money is, as we see with the Kevin Gausman contracts, the Chris Bassitts, and we look at the bullpen and how we've kind of wanted to address the bullpen is you don't necessarily want to hand out these huge contracts because bullpen arms fluctuate year to year. Tim May's experience is just an example of that. 2023, 1.5 ERA, 2024, I'm $1 million ERA. So with bullpen arms, it's one of those things that you don't necessarily want to pay these guys too much money, especially when they haven't shown consistency. And Dillon Tate has not shown consistency. Over his career, not a lot of good stats here, a 4.10 ERA. Again, like he's pitched 5 seasons. He's still in arbitration as a 30-year-old, which is nice. Strikeouts, 170 strikeouts in 215.2 innings, a whip of 117. Overall, nothing's really jumping off the page, but if you're a first overall pick, you obviously were a first overall pick for a reason. There's something there that you're looking to harness. And for Dillon Tate, it's the slider. This guy does have a wipeout slider, and it still is a very productive pitch. And if you know anything about Pete Walker does have this thing where you can revive some players' careers. Look at Henny Cabrera when he came to the Toronto Blue Jays, wasn't that effective, has been very effective over his last year and a half. And when we talk about Dillon Tate, the reason why I think this guy can have a little bit of a bounce back season and maybe be a middle leverage guy. I'm not going to say he's going to take over Jordan Romano's closing role. I'm not going to say he's going to be the 8th inning setup guy, whether that's Erik Swanson, Chad Green, or a free agency guy that you do pick up. But with Dillon Tate right now, the K rate and the whiff rate it sucks. He's not striking people out, which is unfortunate, but he's kind of like a Jose Berrios where he's pitching to contact. He's not necessarily getting the strikeouts, but when you look at his hard hit percentage, you look at his ground ball percentage being at 51%, the barrel percentage. Again, Dillon Tate isn't qualified in a lot of these aspects, but Baseball Savant would have them if he was qualified in the 90th percentile and higher with these. So obviously, ground balls can't get out. They can't go for home runs. At worst case, you're probably, if it's down the line, it might be a triple, but that would have to be a perfectly placed hit. You like these ground ball pitchers in these situations, and obviously you need the guys that can go into these leverage innings, whether it's middle, higher leverage, and get strikeouts. But if there's ever a situation where you need Dillon Tate to come in the middle of an inning, you need a ground ball, maybe you need a double play, I think this guy could have that role with the Toronto Blue Jays in 2025.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's room for him on this team. And that's why I think the decision came down to Dillon Tate over Ryan Burr in the rankings. Just because, yeah, there for situational pitching, Dillon Tate might be a better option. Whereas Ryan Burr is very streaky. You don't really know what he's going to bring to the mound every time. Yes, strikeouts, but he also gives up a little bit more of the long ball where Dillon Tate doesn't. So that is a great component. And Carter, yeah, this debate, I know me and you were sort of having it. It wasn't really much of a debate. I think it was more of like, spitting stats at each other until we were like, all right, fair enough.
Yeah, you win sort of thing.
Yeah.
Of course, I came out as the champion, so who would have thought?
Come on, for the 28th spot. Yeah, at the end of the day, Carter, these guys don't, I hate to say it, they don't mean a lot to me if they play, if they don't play, if they pick up a bunch of bullpen arms and don't end up using these guys. That's great. If they come on and end up having a great season, that's great too. So at the end of the day, I know, some of these guys aren't the most interesting. So the season in reviews, we have to start at the bottom. We have to start at the guys that, weren't the most interesting players ever to play on the Toronto Blue Jays, but they're a part of this team. We wanted to talk about how they did and what we see moving forward, because 2025 is going to be very important for this team and what happens with this group of players. So at the end of the day, Carter, I mean, I don't know. I sort of just leave it there. I don't have much else to say on Dillon Tate. I thought he was okay. I didn't mind his stuff. It wasn't my favorite thing ever. It was sort of just nothing to me, to be honest with you.
Well, and there's a reason that Dillon Tate is just being bounced around a million teams right now. He's kind of on this Nate Pearson experience that didn't necessarily work out. Again, I can name so many other players throughout the Toronto Blue Jays that they were very highly touted prospects and they did not work out. Is the Toronto Blue Jays going to be the key to fixing Dillon Tate? You got to hope so. That's all you can really do. Is it going to happen? I guess we're going to have to see if Pete Walker can work his magic. But overall, with these, just like these rankings that we're doing, especially like 30 to 20, we're really looking at upside here. And when we look at Ryan Burr compared to Dillon Tate, I think Dillon Tate does have that more of the upside just due to the stuff, just due to what I have seen. Again, Dillon Tate, though, like if you're looking at the consistency, I think Ryan Burr is going to be more consistent pitcher than Dillon Tate's going to be. I think Dillon Tate either going to be very successful and probably going to be a decent piece for this bullpen, or he's going to get DFA'd within the first month and a half of the season. So that's kind of what we're doing with this bullpen is you got to take some shots. You got to take some shots on guys that you see the upside in, and hopefully it can work out. And if it doesn't work out, you just keep doing the trial and error process. And sometimes that definitely sucks to watch as a Toronto Blue Jays fan. But hopefully the Toronto Blue Jays, knock on wood, have a little bit more injury luck. Do make at least, again, we always talk about we want one high leverage signing for the bullpen. Other than that, you kind of have to let it be the trial and error thing. And you do have some other options. Like we're not even going over Tommy Nance in our rankings. There's other pitchers in AAA. Again, you don't necessarily want to rely on, but they can be effective if you need them in spot starts.
Yeah, and we'll have to wait and see. I hope you guys tune in. This is going to be a series that we do sort of throughout the whole offseason. Sometimes we'll have, where it's a couple guys and we'll have to go over a few guys in an episode. Or sometimes if it's a bigger name guy, it'll be their episode because there is a lot of talking points around some of these players. We'll get into all of them coming up shortly, sort of in this off season. We're going to try to get to them, but we don't want to overload you either with this. We're going to talk about some free agency stuff tomorrow. One guy that I've talked quite a bit about, I won't give anything away, but I'll say there's one guy that I've talked a little bit about. An interesting conversation around him for sure. So we'll make sure to get into all of that tomorrow. As always, I want to thank you guys for clicking on our video, making us your first listen every day. If you want to find a second listen, go check out Locked On MLB with host Paul Sullivan. Runs a great show, especially around this World Series. It's going to be electric. Continues to be electric, I should say. And anything else, Carter, before we sort of bounce out of here for the night?
Freddie Freeman is disgusting.
Yeah,
that's where another home run for the guy. This is our Canadian MVP. Like Dodgers sweep, Freddie Freeman gets MVP. I mean, I'll take it. The Yankees
second favorite player of all time.
There you go. Second, yeah, it's not quite Josh Donaldson, but he's up there.
No.
Other than that, though, thank you guys for watching, and we will see you guys tomorrow.